There is something happening right now that your rational mind is going to want to explain away. It is going to tell you, this is just a video. It is going to tell you the timing is a coincidence, that the algorithm served this to you the way it serves everything to everyone, randomly, blindly, without intention. And I am asking you, before that part of your mind takes over, to wait, just for a moment. Because there is a difference between what the logical mind can measure and what the deeper self already knows. And somewhere in the space between those two things, something true lives. Something that has been waiting for you to get quiet enough to hear it. You felt it when you saw the title. Not excitement, not simple curiosity. Something older than that. Something that moved through you the way recognition moves. Not like encountering something new, but like remembering something you had almost convinced yourself to forget. That feeling is not random. That feeling is data. And the part of you that knows how to read it has been trying to get your attention for a very long time. Carl Jung believed that the psyche, the living inner world that exists beneath everything you perform, beneath everything you manage and present and protect, is not passive. It does not simply sit inside you like furniture. It moves, it organizes, it reaches. Jung called it the self with a capital S, the deepest organizing intelligence of your inner life, and he believed it was always working, always arranging the conditions of your outer world to reflect what your inner world most urgently needed to understand. He called these moments synchronicities, not miracles, not magic in the childlike sense, something more precise than that. Moments when the outer world and the inner world become briefly, undeniably aligned. When what you need and what arrives cannot be separated by logic alone. And when that happens, something in you knows. You do not decide to know. You simply do. So, I want to ask you something, and I want you to resist the urge to answer it quickly, because quick answers are almost always the armor we wear over the real one. What have you been carrying that you have not been able to put down? Not the things on your to-do list. Not the obligations that have names and deadlines. The other thing, the one that lives underneath all of that. The one that has no clean category. The one you cannot explain to another person without watching their face go slightly blank, because the fullness of it does not fit into the language of casual conversation. That thing, that weight, that question you have been turning over and over in the quiet parts of your day. That is what brought you here. Not the algorithm, not chance. That, because here is what I know about the woman listening to these words right now. She is not someone who takes things lightly. She never has been. She feels things at a depth that other people sense without fully understanding. She has spent years learning to manage that depth, to fold it into something that fits into daily life without overwhelming the people around her. She has become skilled at showing up, at functioning, at being present for everyone who needs her presence, while carrying something enormous and unnamed inside her own chest. And she is tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the kind that lives in your bones, the kind that accumulates over months, sometimes years, of doing everything right on the outside while something on the inside remains unresolved, unspoken, waiting. I want to talk about that waiting, because I think the story you have been telling yourself about what it means is not the complete story, and the incomplete story is doing damage you may not have fully measured yet. Jung wrote extensively about the shadow. He described it as the part of ourselves we hide, not because it is evil, but because it was never given permission to exist. The parts that were told, directly or indirectly, that they were too much, too sensitive, too intense, too deep, too complicated for the world to comfortably hold. And over time, those parts do not disappear. They go underground. They wait. And they communicate in the only language the unconscious has available to it, which is not words, not logic, not reason. They communicate through longing, through the dreams that leave a specific ache when you wake from them, through the relationships that pull you towards certain people, as if a magnetic force exists between you and them. A force your mind cannot justify, but your body recognizes immediately. That pull you have felt towards someone, that specific, undeniable pull that existed in your life, that maybe still exists, the one that logic kept trying to explain away, while your heart kept returning to it like a compass needle that refuses to stop pointing north. That pull was not random either. Nothing about your inner life is random, and that is the thing most people never fully understand about their own emotional experiences. We move through our relationships as if they are events that happen to us, as if other people are simply crossing our paths, but Jung understood something that changes everything when you truly absorb it. The people who affect us most deeply, the ones who reach into us and rearrange something we cannot name, are not accidents. They are mirrors. They arrive in our lives carrying the exact qualities we need to face within ourselves, the things we cannot see in ourselves directly because the angle is wrong. So life provides a mirror in the shape of another person, and we look at that person and feel something enormous, something that floods past the boundaries we carefully maintain, and we call it love. Sometimes it is love. Often it is something more layered than love. It is recognition, a meeting between your known self and your hidden self, reflected back through the presence of another person. And that is why losing that person, or almost losing them, or living in the suspended uncertainty of not knowing what that connection will become, is not just painful in the ordinary sense. It is disorienting at a level that goes deeper than heartbreak, because you are not simply losing a person. You are losing the mirror. You are losing access to the version of yourself that felt most awake, most alive, most real. And that is a grief that no one has language for. People around you tried to offer the usual comfort. Time heals. There are other people. You deserve better. Move on. And you nodded. Maybe you even believed them in the hours that felt manageable, but in the moments that did not feel manageable. In the 2 a.m. hours, when the world became honest and the performance stopped, you knew those answers were not wrong exactly. They were simply not deep enough. They were touching the surface of something that lives at the center. Here is what I want you to understand about that center. The thing living there is not weakness. It is not dysfunction. It is not proof that you loved too much or gave too much or allowed yourself to become too attached to an outcome that was never guaranteed. The thing living at the center is an invitation, a profound, uncomfortable, ongoing invitation from your own deepest self to stop moving around the truth and begin moving into it. The truth is this: you have been waiting for permission to want what you want without apologizing for wanting it, permission to have standards that reflect your actual worth rather than the worth you were taught to settle for, permission to be confused and remain in that confusion long enough for something real to emerge from it, rather than reaching for a premature resolution just to escape the discomfort of not knowing. And the permission you have been waiting for, it was never going to come from the person you have been waiting for it from. It could not come from there, because nobody can hand you what only you have the authority to give yourself. Let me be precise here, because this is the part that matters, and it is also the part most likely to be misunderstood. I am not telling you to give up. I am not offering you the comfortable advice that everything happens for a reason, and therefore you should release your grip and float peacefully downstream. That is not what this is. I am not here to redirect your attention away from what you actually want. I am here to point towards something more honest than that, which is this: what you want is entirely valid. The depth of your feeling is not the problem. The problem, if we are being precise about it, is where you have been placing the weight of your story. You have been placing it outside of yourself, in the behavior of another person, in what they do or do not do, in whether they reach out or remain silent, in whether they step toward you or step back. in whether they choose the version of their life that includes you or the version that keeps you at a careful distance. And every morning you wake up and place the weight of your story there. In that external location, you give away a piece of the authorship that belongs only to you. Jung described the psychological process of individuation as the lifelong journey toward becoming who you actually are, not who you were shaped to be by your early experiences, not who someone else needed you to be in order to feel comfortable, not the version of yourself that learned to shrink, to accommodate, to hold back the full force of who you are, to prevent other people from feeling overwhelmed. The real self, the whole self, the one that knows exactly what it needs and chooses over and over to honor that knowledge even when it costs something. And here is what he understood about that journey that most people miss entirely. Individuation is not a destination. It does not end. It is not a goal you reach and then rest from. It is a continuous unfolding. It happens in the choices you make when no one is watching. In the moments you decide not to betray yourself again, even when betrayal would have been easier. Even when staying true to yourself means sitting with discomfort nobody else can see. Even when the right choice feels invisible from the outside. You have been making those choices. You may not have called them that. You may have called them surviving. You may have called them getting through the day. You may have called them simply doing what had to be done. But I want to reframe that for you, because the language you use about your own experience shapes the meaning your mind assigns to it. You have not just been surviving. You have been individuating. You have been becoming. In every moment, you chose to tell the truth to yourself when a comfortable lie was available. In every moment, you resisted the urge to reach toward what was familiar, even though familiar was no longer healthy. In every moment, you sat inside your own discomfort rather than outsourcing the relief of it to someone who was not safe enough to hold it. You were doing the deep work, the invisible work, the work that never earns applause and rarely earns acknowledgement, the work that is nevertheless the most important work a human being can do. And I want to speak now about the person on your mind, because they are there. They have been there throughout this entire message. Your mind keeps returning to them the way a tongue returns to a sore tooth. Not because you cannot stop, because something remains unfinished. And you are right, something does remain unfinished. But I want to offer you a different framework for understanding what that unfinished thing actually is, because I think you have been telling yourself a story about it that is keeping you smaller than you need to be. The story sounds something like this. If only they would do something specific, say something specific, choose something specific, then you would have what you need to finally move forward. Their action, their gesture, their clarity is the missing piece. And until that piece arrives, you remain in this suspended place, waiting, hoping, wondering, reading into silences, constructing interpretations from fragments. I know that story because it is one of the most common stories the human heart tells itself, and it feels completely true from inside it. But here is what is actually true. The forward movement you are waiting for permission to begin. It is not located on the other side of their decision. It is located inside you. It has always been located inside you. And the moment you transfer that truth from something you intellectually understand to something you actually live, everything changes. Not because the external circumstances magically resolve, but because you stop organizing your life around a question someone else holds the answer to, and you begin organizing your life around the answers only you can give. Now, the part of you that loves this person is going to push back on that. It is going to say, that sounds like giving up. That sounds like choosing not to fight for something real. That sounds like wisdom dressed up as resignation. And I want to address that part directly, with care, because it deserves a real response rather than a dismissal. Choosing yourself is not giving up on love. Choosing yourself is not declaring that connection is unimportant or that what you shared was an illusion. Choosing yourself means understanding that real love, the kind that actually sustains and nourishes rather than depletes and destabilizes, cannot exist between two people when one of them has stopped existing as a full person in their own right. When one person has reduced themselves to a function of waiting, has organized their interior life around the presence or absence of another, has placed their sense of self-worth in the hands of someone who may not yet know how to hold it with the care it deserves. Real love requires two whole people. And right now, one of those people needs your full attention. That person is you. There is something that happens in the nervous system of a woman who has been in emotional uncertainty for an extended period of time. The body begins to read ambiguity as threat. The spaces between messages begin to carry weight they were never designed to carry. Silence becomes evidence. And the mind, not the relationship. Not this specific person, the pattern beneath the relationship, the belief that was already living inside you before they arrived, that love is something you have to earn through patience, through endurance, through remaining available, even when your availability is not being met with equivalent care. That belief did not begin with them. They simply activated it. And that is what the mirror does. That is what Jung meant when he wrote about projection, about how we encounter in the external world the things we most urgently need to encounter within ourselves. They did not create the wound. They revealed it. And that revelation, as painful as it has been, as disorienting and exhausting as it continues to be, that revelation is the gift buried inside this entire experience, because a wound you cannot see cannot heal. A pattern you cannot name will simply repeat itself, wearing different faces. And you, with your depth, with your emotional intelligence, with your capacity to feel things fully rather than skating along the surface of your own life, you are ready to see it. You have been ready for longer than you know. So, here is what I want to leave you with. Not a promise, not a prediction, not a reassurance that everything will work out the way you are hoping, because I cannot offer you that, and anyone who does is selling you something. What I want to leave you with is something more durable than reassurance. I want to leave you with a reorientation. The question you have been living inside, the one that sounds like, will this work out? Will he come back? Will things finally resolve? That question is not the wrong question. It is simply not the most important question. The most important question is this: who are you becoming through this? Because that answer, unlike the fate of any particular relationship, is entirely under your authority. Every day you spend in this in-between place, you are making choices about who you are becoming. You're choosing whether to grow bitter or grow wise, whether to grow closed or grow rooted, whether to grow smaller in order to stop feeling so much, or to grow larger, to expand into the full territory of who you actually are, even though that expansion is terrifying and uncertain and sometimes lonely. The version of you on the other side of this chapter is not the same woman who entered it. She has been shaped by everything you have endured, everything you have chosen, everything you have refused to compromise on, even when compromise would have brought temporary relief. She's more herself, more honest, more grounded, more clear about what she will and will not accept, more capable of recognizing real love when it arrives because she has spent this time learning to recognize and honor the real love she owes to herself. And about the person on your mind, the real truth is one of the most quietly powerful things you will ever accept. You cannot control their journey. You cannot accelerate their growth. You cannot love them into readiness they have not yet found in themselves. But you can do something that changes everything about the dynamic between you, something that operates quietly beneath the surface of every interaction you will ever have with them again. You can become undeniable. Not in a strategic sense, not in a performing for their benefit sense, in the most authentic sense possible. You can do the work of becoming so thoroughly yourself, so rooted in your own worth, so clear in your own direction, that the version of you they encounter next, whether that encounter comes soon or much later, is someone they cannot measure against the person they already thought they knew. Not because you changed for them, because you changed for yourself. And that difference between changing to recapture someone and changing to honor yourself is everything. It is the entire distance between a woman who waits and a woman who becomes. You came to this message carrying something. You felt it when the title found you, that quiet, heavy, knowing feeling. And I want you to understand what that feeling was. It was not grief, though grief may have been part of it. It was not longing, though longing lives inside it. It was your own deepest intelligence, recognizing that you were approaching a threshold, a crossing point, the kind that does not announce itself with clarity, the kind that arrives wrapped in confusion, wearing the disguise of stagnation, looking from the outside exactly like nothing is happening. But everything is happening. Everything has been happening. The dissolving, the disorientation, the exhaustion, the questions with no clean answers, the nights when certainty felt completely out of reach. That has all been preparation, not punishment, preparation. And the life on the other side of that threshold is not waiting for the right person to walk through it with you. It is not waiting for a specific outcome to arrive before it agrees to begin. It is waiting for you. Only you. The fullest, most awake, most honest version of you, the one who no longer needs to be chosen in order to understand her worth, the one who knows what she deserves, not because someone told her, but because she has lived the experience of honoring herself even when it was the hardest possible choice, the one who can love without losing herself because she has built a self sturdy enough to remain whole through love rather than dissolving into it. That version of you is not far away. She is not a future dream. She is already here, emerging slowly but unmistakably from every choice you have made throughout this chapter, from every morning you continued, from every night you survived, from every moment you chose truth over comfort, from every time you refused to abandon the version of yourself that knows what real love actually feels like and refuses to accept anything less. You crossed the threshold. You may not feel it yet. You may not have the language for it yet, but you did. And the life that has been forming in silence, piece by piece, choice by choice, is already beginning to take shape around you. Look closely. It is already here.